picture and ask any other questions that you've been wanting to ask me about for the last few days. Go ahead, Pauline.
Do you want me to make a little pitch first?
Yeah.
Okay, well, some of you will have heard this before, but it certainly bears repeating, and I've been repeating it around the world on every occasion that I could find, and including most recently at the World Cooperative Economic Summit in Quebec City, but also to the World Bank and IMF Forum at a lunchtime meeting attended by 170. We're making the case that actually this is the moment for a shift in the global economy. We need a better balanced global economy that actually takes into account the needs of human beings as well as the needs of capital. So what we're saying is we want to see a more diversified global economy which actually looks at people as the centre of economic decision making and doesn't just leave people at the mercy of economic decision making. So for us, that means the co-op model, which is the biggest part of the member-owned business sector in the global economy, needs greater recognition for its already, the huge impact it has on the world already. But the more that it can do, the capacity it has to do more. And we are convinced that at this time, when wherever you are in the world, there are significant issues. Certainly in the developed world and the post-industrial world, call it what you will, where there's financial collapse and economic recession. And we see what's happening to families and individuals, small businesses, the vulnerable, all across the developed world. And I wonder why. I look at, for instance, in Spain, where the housing market collapsed, and you know that people are losing their homes and people are living in squats. I've seen lots of TV coverage about them living in squats, and you wonder why, in the long term, can't the cooperative movement be working with the Spanish government to do something in terms of creating housing co-ops with those homes and giving those people some sort of long-term ability to look after their families and to have some security of tenure and to get on with their lives and start having the opportunity to be productive citizens again and get Spain out of the problem it's in. I have to say, in Spain, and I was there 2 or 3 times this year, we've seen the co-op movement there continue to grow. And I was visiting the consumer co-ops around the Mediterranean rim, and it was clear they were still growing, they were still opening new shops, they were still employing more people, and they were investing in their environmental credentials, which was helping to grow their business, which is very interesting. So there is the opportunity for cooperatives at every level, whether it's looking after the needs of people who are desperately in need, being dispossessed or whatever, but also the conventional cooperative businesses to continue to grow if they're selling their model on the basis of their environmental, social and economic impact. So what we're arguing at global level is the need for us to have a greater input to the way in which the global economy develops. So, for instance, why is it that there isn't a single cooperative economist on the board of the World Bank? And why is it that when the G20 meets and you've got the B20, the Business Advisory Group, sitting alongside it, I looked at all the companies that came to the Business Advisory Group meeting at the last meeting of the G20, 125 businesses, not one of them cooperative or even mutuals, not one. So, you know, there is a real job to be done in allowing us and for us to get access to some of those more informal but terribly important, growing in importance, those informal decision-making bodies that are actually beginning to demonstrate that they lead where the global economy is going. So we believe that we've got a lot to offer. And if you think about it, there are 25 million unemployed young people in Europe, and that's the size of a small to middle-sized country of unemployed people in Europe alone. And we have to do more to give them some hope for the future. And I just wanted to quote from Dominic Barton from McKinsey, McKinsey recently were with us in Quebec, where they produced some very substantial new research on the role, the opportunities and the challenges for the cooperative movement. But he was, I think just this week, was quoted as saying, the time has come for the co-op model to be put forward and celebrated. He called for a shift in the business world from a focus on shareholder values to stakeholder values, and strongly criticised the short-term approach of conventional business. Quarterly capitalism does not lead to good results, he said. And here you have somebody from McKinsey saying exactly, basically, what I've just said to you, and making that case. So I'm sure my colleagues here will be able to, and I'm sure the Director General will want to say something about the blueprint, which is our view and our sense of where we need to go in the future and take the co-op movement, building on the momentum of this year. Chuck.
Thank you. I was asked at the start of this conference, as people were gathering, if cooperatives are an alternative to austerity. And it's kind of an interesting way to ask the question. And I guess I would say that there's no magic wand for where we are. I've been talking to people at Rochdale. We had meetings there earlier this week, and here in Manchester, cab drivers and visitors from UK who are here. And a lot of people some of these people are coming, they don't see the way out. It looks really bleak, and they don't really see the solution. So I don't think you're going to, again, wave a magic wand and have some alternative to austerity, but you're going to rebuild. You don't want to give up hope. You're going to go somewhere. And what are you going to build to come out of where you are? What kind of a solution is ahead? And what you probably sense here inside these walls that you don't always sense outside in the communities where the austerity is being felt, what you sense inside here is this optimism, this celebration of the International Year of Cooperatives, and this recognition that the cooperative model is a very successful model for the kinds of intractable problems that the world is facing. And that's why we've developed this blueprint, because we're not willing to give up on the International Year. We think we have a momentum here, we think we have a message, we think the time is right for a cooperative decade, and I'll talk just briefly in a second about what that is. But we have examples of how this has worked. We were reminded recently with the death of the founder of Amul Dairy in India at 90 years of age, and it was quite a significant event. His death captured obituaries in major journals and newspapers around the world because he really revolutionized the dairy industry in India. He took millions over time, millions of small dairy farmers, and built them into a federation that became today the largest agribusiness in India of any form, the largest agribusiness, and the best known brand in India, and an exporter of milk around to countries around the world, the largest producer of milk in the world. And he did that by taking these very small dairy farmers and pulling them together. So now we're looking at Africa, and we know we have this food crisis. We had the Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization speaking to our group here, was that just yesterday morning, I guess. And he was talking about the food crisis that we're facing. It's one of the biggest problems in the world, and it needs to be solved, and it will be solved. And it will be solved because there are 500 smallhold farmers that will be somehow turned into a more productive system. And the question is, how do you capitalize on that? Will it be multinational corporations that extract that, and sometimes predatory countries that use that for their benefit? Or will you be able to use the Amul Dairy cooperative model that worked in India and keep that wealth in the community, keep the benefit of that increased productivity in the community through a cooperative structure? And we think that's the way you help pull people out of poverty, not simply solve the food problem, but actually help these communities and these individuals as well. So it's a self-help model that works extremely well. It operates at scale. We just released this World Cooperative Monitor this week that shows the size of the cooperative movement. There are 2,200 cooperatives in this database, 1,400 over 100 million US dollars a year turnover. They're sizable cooperatives. The largest 300 cooperatives here are but have an annual turnover of $2 trillion. These are systems that have managed to federate and have great impact and operate according to cooperative values, which keeps wealth in the communities, helps with people out of poverty. So it's a model that works. The blueprint says, why isn't this a bigger model? Why don't we have a larger proportion of the global economy? What would have to change for that to be true? And it identifies strategies that will be necessary in significant areas for that to come to pass, for this 2020 vision that we've set out here to be achieved. So we know it's not going to happen overnight, but we know there's a bit of a pull out of some of the difficult situations that some countries have found themselves in. Well, they don't have a way out right now, and they're not taking steps that will get them out in any time soon, and that's why you see the press up like this and down like this, and the reports are very unclear. We have a blueprint, we have a strategy, we have an approach, and we know that it works in the kinds of situations that many countries in the world are facing.
Well, let me add to that, as I'm responsible for representing interests of cooperatives in Europe, and obviously in Europe we're going through a very profound crisis, and maybe we are the first one to really hopefully go through a transition which takes us into new waters. And it started with a financial crisis, so I mean it all started with money, but the thing is, money as such was not the problem, but its use and its quantity. Its use for, well, we have it seen in the banking sector, rather than putting it into the real economy, putting it into a financial economy, and states, of course, unfortunately also rather subsidizing unsuccessful things, and rather also again subsidizing development into the real economies. And that's a problem which is not going to go away, because our financial economy is so much larger than the real economy today that we'll have to get this balloon smaller. What we've seen, however, of cooperative banks there in Europe, they have actually gained market shares during that crisis in those countries where they're strong, be it in Germany or in France or in the UK, for simple reasons. They have put their money into the local economy. It's low risk due to low returns, but I mean it's stable. It provides stability. If you put your money in there, it's still there. Whereas a lot of people who put money into equity and it's not there anymore, it's gone. And I think this stability is something which is being more valued in times of crisis, and that's why customers are coming back to cooperatives, because that's how we came into existence in Europe, through a crisis, and through cooperation, really building stability. So cooperative banks, of course, are doing well. Real economy is a much more difficult picture, because cooperatives are not living in a parallel economy. We are living in the real economy, so cooperatives are also suffering when consumption is going down, in particular in retail or in agriculture. And in those countries in Southern Europe, as Greece or in Spain, we have seen that. But we have also seen in those countries which have a weaker cooperative economy. Those strong cooperative economies, which you find like in France or Germany, have fared better than those in Greece or in Spain or in Portugal, where they're only parts of the economy are cooperative, in particular in the banking sector. So I think that is important to see. And in the crisis, I think what's interesting as well, while shareholding companies are shedding labor and contributing to the large increased unemployment, actually cooperatives are shedding first their financial reserves before shedding people. And I think that's very important to mark a difference here. Our focus is on people first and not money first, and we're seeing that in the crisis, because the employment in cooperatives has been more stable than it has been in shareholding companies. At the same time, we have to see how do we get out of the crisis, and I think the blueprint is an opportunity to demonstrate in Europe, not outside of Europe. If we can't get it right in Greece or in Spain, let's not look into Africa or Latin America. This is our challenge here in Europe, to help to sort out things in Greece and build or rebuild a stronger cooperative economy in there. And there are a number of needs necessary. We need the right legal framework for that, which we don't have. It's a framework, so we need better regulation, which means not a one-size-fits-all, which we see in many countries, which is based on the shareholding model, mainly on the big company model, that it's rather taking the differences into account. A cooperative has a different purpose than a shareholding company. It's not about maximization of profits. It's about profit. Of course, they have to be profitable, but it's about satisfying the needs of their members, and they are multidimensional. That's an important part, and of course, we need to promote that. Cooperatives are not that much known outside. We have to get outside. I think cooperatives have been very much inward-looking. It's time to get out and bring the message that this model can bring a difference to people and get them involved. And we see that in new sectors in Europe, in renewable energy. We have more and more community-based renewable energy cooperatives all around Europe, which are making a difference and which get people engaged. But we need much more. We need much more cooperatives, in particular in the south, and we need also much more media, positive and negative, because not everything is, of course, blue sky in cooperatives either. You know, they are businesses, and they have to survive, and they're common people. And you know so we have to be. We don't want to just celebrate ourselves. We want to be recognized as normal citizens who want to get out of the crisis. That's really the message here.
I represent the insurance sector for cooperatives and mutuals, which is the largest sector in the World Cooperative Monitor. We're about 40% of that, the largest 300. We are the fastest growing part of the insurance industry by a long way. We've grown from 2007, beginning of the crisis, where we were 23.5% of the mutual market, of the insurance market. 2011, we're 26.3. That's a huge growth. That's globally. Now, why are we seeing this growth? Well, we're seeing it in almost all countries in the world. So not only are we growing faster there, but our total turnover for the industry is now 1.1 trillion US dollars. We have assets of 7 trillion US dollars. So there are large organizations representing a large part. In Europe, if you cascade it into the region, we've grown from 22.6% of the market share to 27.5% of the market share. So again, substantial growth in all of our European regions. And if you want to take this back down to, because Greece is the popular area, we've got one small member in Greece, which in 2010 grew by 30% in terms of its premium. 2011, it's grown by more than that. So we're seeing significant growth at every level of all of our members around the world. Now, why are we seeing this happen? Well, basically because we do believe it's our particular business model focuses on value-based strategies. So because we care about what we do, and because of the fact that we listen to the customers, we engage with the customers, we want to know what they want. It's not about us telling them what they want. This is what appeals to the general public now, and we're seeing this time and time again. So many of our insurers are now marketing themselves as different with their values, whether it's co-op, mutual, whether it's about their service, whether it's about their claims. Whatever they're using to differentiate themselves, it's working because the customers love it. And that's why we're seeing the growth. Now, on the back of growth, we all need growth to grow our businesses. We all need to be profitable and well run. We know that. But to come back to some of the quotes about the young and the unemployment, we've got a nice infograph here that looks at how many we employed in 2007, which was 301,000 people. We're now, in 2011, employing 374,000 people. So nearly 75,000 more people are employed in our sector alone because we are growing and because we invest in people. So we are an answer as a sector in insurance. Just multiply that up with all of the other different co-op models you can get, and you can see the numbers really do stack up. We are seeing a big move away from the capitalistic model, as Dominic Barton in his quote earlier referred to. It's not dead and buried, it's not broken, it just needs to change. And it's changing, as we've heard many of the politicians. I mean, David Cameron in this country called it responsible capitalism. That's where we are. We're in that space already. We're doing it. It's not about the profit and loss anymore. It's not about the cost of returns. It's about the triple bottom line. That means not just looking at the profits, but also looking at the social, environmental, and ethical statement that we put out, that many of our members do so exceptionally well. This is where I think the world's moving. It's about having those two reports side by side and making sure that the key performance indices and the incentives that we give to our top leaders are actually reflected in both the profit side and the CSR, the corporate social responsibility side. If we don't do both of those together, we're going to just get ourselves back into the same old position where we were in 2007, where the capitalistic market nearly broke the world. So we have a place to play. We need to raise our game, which we are doing significantly. We're doing exceptionally well all around the world. So the numbers stack up. The public love it. Now we've just got to get the message out there. So this is where you guys in the media really will help by giving them that message that we're doing well. We know we're doing well. We just need to tell the rest of the world.
Great. Any questions? Yes.
Which specific kind of groups or movements are looking for kind of an alternative to both the crisis and kind of like the model of capitalism? over the last 30 years should cooperatives be looking to ally with, and why?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. But I think we can meet the needs across society. I don't think we're reaching out to particular bits of society. We can look at what happened in the Occupy movement and say, you know, what we saw then was people who were unhappy not just with their political environment, but they were wanting economic justice. And wherever they came from in society, whoever they were saying economic justice, not just justice, but the opportunity to impact on our economic environment. That's what they wanted. And we believe co-ops do that. But then if you look at young graduates leaving university without jobs, we're saying to them, actually, you know, professional cooperatives, groups of young people coming together with different skills to say have a business consultancy together, that works well, and that's an entirely different group of people. So wherever you are, you know, the cooperative model fits. It's very flexible, and you know, we've got some very radical edge cooperatives in this country, and we've got some very traditional ones, but they're all serving different people, different needs, and they're all using the same model of business, and I think that's our strength. And if you guys want to add anything to that.
Maybe just to add, in Europe, of course, partnerships are really crucial in order to get things through, and I think that our advantage is having an open model. We can partner easily with civil society. Fair trade is a natural one, you know, where we share the same values and principles. It can be sometimes with the SMEs or with other forms of businesses where we share actually a lot of things. Family businesses have often the same values, just on a very local level. So I think even with policymakers, you know, local councils and regional organizations, there's a wide array of it. It's just, you know, finding the right organizational structures to make this powerful and change the game in which we're still in at the moment.
I agree with that in terms of the advocacy basis, absolutely.
Question for Klaus. If you don't have the ear of the World Bank and other people like the IMF, how are we going to get the legal changes needed that you refer to go and encourage co-ops in places like Greece and Italy?
Well, legal changes, luckily we don't need the World Bank and the IMF for that. Well, the IMF is a little bit of the more difficult issue because they're part of the Troika, and they actually sometimes have some negative impacts on legislation in those countries. I think it has to be, on the one hand, from the grassroots, from the cooperatives, and that's why we're working in Greece with the cooperatives to build a new cooperative general law. And and at the same time, you have to get in contact with government and work with them together. You can't do it without. So I think in Greece, we're on that way. They want to build a new general cooperative law in 2013. They don't have the expertise in the government, but they're very open for us to support them in that. So I think it's together with the Greeks to do that, and not with the IMF.
I'll just add too that we actually do have the ear of these organizations. The International Year of Cooperatives is a United Nations gift to cooperatives. It's a recognition of the value that we're bringing. They don't bestow that lightly. And we also have an ongoing partnership in working with them. We saw the results of that in the Rio Plus 20 UN Conference on Sustainable Development, where cooperatives were really for the first time recognized as part of the solution on agricultural sustainability, on jobs creation, on poverty reduction. These kinds of soft law statements in those global documents are essential as we build those up. We can then take those and use those in country after country to point to what best practice is, what the global leaders are saying. We're developing, in addition, an important strategy on some of the multilateral, not truly global institutions, because we think that they will have increasing influence in the future, the G8s, G20s. Increasingly, they're taking policies that they can't get through on a global level, but they're on issues that they know require more than a unilateral national policy direction. And so we're developing that as well. On the World Bank, what we hear from them legitimately is that they need better data from us. And that's part of what we're trying to produce in the report that has disappeared. It's hard to gather this data. And we've partnered this year with Eurixia at University of Trento so that we have independent analysis of the cooperative impact on society. And the better we can get at producing that and producing research and reports that authentically show the impact we're having, the greater we think our message will be at World Bank as well.
Just on legislation, by the way, one of the UN's demands or requests of its member states, all its governments, was that they actually did look at their legislation to see if it was fit for the 21st century. And we've seen, even in this country, David Cameron has made a statement saying that he will consolidate and bring together cooperative law together in one act. It's still based on 1864 legislation or something, and there's loads of amendments to it. It's nonsense. But then we've seen across the world, the Russians have introduced a new cooperative legislation, which our members here are very excited about. First time it's happened in some time, and they've just introduced new fiscal regime for cooperatives. Excuse the voice, I'm losing it. And the Indian government this year has introduced a new cooperative law, which makes it a fundamental human right that
Under the Constitution.
under the constitution that Indians should be able to start cooperatives. I mean, and in many countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, other countries, we're seeing cooperative law being reviewed on the back of the UN demand for the International Year. So it is having an impact. It's a very rich gift to us this year. Any other questions?
Kind of again and again, I hear people saying that you need to get the cooperative message out, and that people they only talk to themselves, and it kind of that seems to be the thing every time. But actually, how are you going to get the message out? I think that is the thing. Like, how do you plan to tell people that don't know about cooperatives what they are and how they make that impact?
Well, making a great start talking to you lot, I think. And we've been doing that across this year hugely. You know, just having opportunities such as I've had to, as the president of the ICA, to speak at the General Assembly of the UN on the launch last year, to go and meet in the White House at a seminar run by the Obama administration with 150 US cooperators, speaking in the Great Hall of the People in Tiananmen Square in China with the Chinese Deputy Prime Minister and 300 officials from Chinese government departments about how they can use cooperatives to lift 600 million people in rural poverty in China out of poverty. It was a huge opportunity. Speaking to members of the Latin American Parliament who met in Panama City, in the Australian Parliament, or at a ministerial meeting in Bangkok where 18 ministers from the Asia-Pacific region met, or last week in Rwanda where 34 governments from across Africa came together. These are the opportunities we've never had before. So we're building these and pushing it out to the press, always associated with press conferences around. You've done the same, and we've all done the same around the world.
The message is getting there, basically. You put it on the political agenda, it gets onto everyone else's agenda. And that's the strategy, really.
I would add, too, that we can't undervalue what this year has meant on our messaging as well. It's created an opportunity to really, we've used the year to relaunch the cooperative brand. And the blueprint has some important thinking that has come out of the year. Among that is, what is the message? So it's okay to get the word cooperative out in the public press, but what does it mean to people? What is it we want them to know about it? And what we've tried to get out this year is that the cooperative is a serious business model. It can operate at scale. It's a serious contender for an important part of a diversified global economy. It's values-based, so it's not business as usual. It's a different kind of model. And third, members have a voice. It's owned by members. At a time when people feel so disconnected from these large-scale systems that dominate their lives and that have failed them in many cases, this is a model that they can influence. This is a model where they can participate. So in the blueprint, the first strand here, the first strategy, is to get people to recognize that a competitive advantage for the cooperative is our participation. It is the most participatory model of enterprise. It calls for engagement, and when it works at its best that way, it's the most participatory model. Second, it's the most sustainable model. It's an efficient model if you look at environmental sustainability, social sustainability, economic sustainability combined. If you look at economic sustainability by itself, if you look at economic performance, it is not the most efficient model. If you recognize that you want to combine economic performance with environmental performance, with social performance, it is the most efficient model. So we want to get out the message that is participatory and is sustainable. And then a third strand here, and it's the only other one I'll mention right now, is identity. We have to manage the cooperative image, or it gets managed for us. it's seen in different ways by different people. So we need a more collective understanding of how to manage those messages. And this is all about getting cooperatives around the world. Cooperatives in 100 countries that are members of ICA agreed yesterday that this is the way forward for us to make sure that we're seen as an important solution to these world's intractable problems.
When at the center of your preoccupation are people, then communication is something which will always come up. And I think member engagement internally is very important. When you have millions of members, that already creates a lot of work for communication and getting them engaged. I think for the outside, we have some target groups where we really need to work on. One are policymakers, because they are not really taking the cooperatives very much into consideration. But I think another one, a particular group, are younger people as well, because we have lost a generation of cooperators, because the last 30 years have not been the high grounds of cooperatives. I mean, they've all gone into private companies, so we have to get them back and attract them. I think, and there are lots of opportunities there for it, but we have to do that and probably be a little bit more professional when it comes to communication. I mean, shareholding companies are very good when it comes to marketing and creating illusions. I think we have to use our things of the realities, bringing them across more positively, but also more demanding. We're often too perceived as too nice, but we also have to be a little bit more harsher sometimes and just fight for our rights. And I think that's something we need to learn and learn from the experiences outside.
Yes.
Tanya, do you want to ask a question or shall I?
Can you translate what I'm going to say? ¿Puedes traducir lo que voy a decir? En
En
mi país se está por aplicar una reforma fiscal donde todos los productos de primera necesidad se elevarán a un 18%, de manera tal que toda la población va a empobrecer. Yo entiendo que el cooperativismo se levanta por encima de eso, pero ¿tiene la ACE alguna propuesta en caso de que en nuestro país también la cooperativa tengan que pagar, según la reforma fiscal, impuestos ahora?
Okay, have you understood that?
I hope you
He's
have.
basically saying that there is a fiscal reform in his country, and now first need products like basic products.
Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, are going to be like taxed at 18% more. So he was
Inclusive
just,
piensan incidir en la cooperativa, que si la ACE ya está viendo eso, ¿cómo consideran?
so he was, obviously that's something that is going to be applied to all the businesses, also the cooperative model. So he was just wondering whether the International Alliance was thinking of doing something just to protect cooperatives to, of this situation, from this situation, or avoid them that they have to pay so much and help them with that.
I think, from my perspective, I think we need to talk to you about it a bit more to understand exactly what's going on. I mean, I wouldn't like to make a public statement without being a little bit more aware of exactly what the detail is.
I think that's true, although conceptually, if I distance myself from any knowledge of this specific case, I can say that we do have a constant challenge, and it's an high agenda priority for us, to make sure that regulations that apply to businesses, that are imposed on businesses, are targeted, and that cooperatives aren't swept up in regulatory or tax issues that really ought not to pertain to us. And that is an important part of our overall public policy strategy, is to make certain that the unique and specific aspects of cooperatives are understood by regulators so that they don't damage our model at the time they should be supporting it.
What I can just add is, in Europe, when policymakers start to get onto the purse of cooperatives and wanting to get more money out of them, which we judge for not valuable reasons, you can actually mobilize our cooperators quite quickly, and because they get to the policymakers, because we have hundreds of thousands of people, and when they start talking to the different parliamentarians and all that, from the council up to the parliament, that does make noise. And we have had that experience in Europe already, that the Commission at some stage went, could you stop calling us, please? We have got the message. So I think it has to come from inside in particular. From outside, it's always a little bit more complicated, and one has to understand the local context. But the power lies inside of you. Yeah. Sorry, I have to go to the football game.
We can grab class tomorrow if you want to talk to him tomorrow.
Is that okay? Or?
Yeah, fine, it's absolutely fine, perfect.
Great.
Well,
Well,
I
thank
just
you.
want to introduce before everyone is on that. Jose Antonio Javier Villanueva is the youth member of the RCA board, and he's here to say a few words about two very special guests who's from Chile and the Dominican Republic. Yeah.
I've just produced an essay competition,
Oh, thanks.
which I think will be
Oh,
interesting.
great, great. Thank you very much.
And there's a link to the winning essay on the back.
Ahorita no sé.
To URL here.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
And there's a couple of paragraphs which I thought would be interesting as well, the actual overall tenor of the essay, which we plan on. So just what you can say.
You know, Cliff,
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay,
one of the
Mills.
authors of this.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
of course.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm afraid he just came first.
Who came first? First prize, Danny. Oh, right, okay. Thanks. So, Jose Antonio, go.
Ok. Muchas gracias por el espacio, el tiempo. Casi. Gracias por el tiempo y bueno, es un gusto informarles que aquí tenemos a los ganadores del concurso COP Art, que fue para la juventud.
So he's saying basically, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure being here. And I just want to introduce you these two people that have been awarded, which was the COP Art
The
Award
COP Art
for a video, I think.
es una competencia de video, fotografía y música dirigido para la juventud especialmente.
It was a video that was basically done for. It was a competition. Which was part of the International Year of Cooperatives, and what they did was a video for young people.
Es el primer concurso que se organiza con la Alianza Cooperativa Internacional y tuvimos respuesta de más de 35 países con 170 proyectos.
How many countries?
35.
So it's the first time this competition takes place, and it has received 170 projects and from 35 different countries.
Y bueno, aquí tenemos a los ganadores en música y en video. Roberto de Dominicana, República Dominicana, y Francisca de Chile. Son los primeros lugares que se ganaron $3,000 y un viaje a Manchester.
Okay, so Roberto is from. These are two of the winners. Roberto has been awarded the Music Award, and he's from Dominican Republic. And Francisca is from Chile, and she has been awarded the Video Award. And they have each of them won $3,000 USA dollars for this.
Más el viaje para Manchester.
Plus this trip to come to Manchester.
Ese es el primer concurso. Tenemos nuevos proyectos para el año 2013 que iremos dando a conocer por medio de la Alianza Cooperativa.